Hear me pretty well on the mic? I think so. Well, thank you, Christy, for that lovely introduction. I mean, she pretty much said it all. I think I could just sit pretty wrapped up of pain in a nutshell. Yes, I'm very excited to be here tonight, be able to talk to you about the subject of pain and really this problem that we find ourselves in our country when it comes to treating pain. And really, it's become a worldwide epidemic. In order to be able to have a discussion about pain and really start to understand where we are at with pain, we have to kind of understand the model that has been in front of patients and people for a while now in terms of what has driven the problem that we have in pain. And to understand that, we have to spend a little bit of time talking about the neuroscience behind pain. If you can begin to understand a little bit of the science behind how pain really works and how the brain is affected by pain and how systems in the body start to change the longer somebody's in pain, you begin to understand pain. And once you understand a little bit about the neuroscience behind pain, it makes sense to talk about nutrition and exercise and how nutrition and exercise play really a pretty vital role in understanding pain. As Christy mentioned, although she said 1 million people, it's actually well over 100 million people in our country are suffering in chronic pain. When you look at that's more people than cancer, diabetes, and heart attack combined, it's kind of an astounding thought. Unfortunately, a lot of these people are not in front of you because they're kind of a hidden group, and the model that they've had access to try to get help has essentially failed them. They kind of just find themselves kind of cast to the side, kind of told that there's nothing more we can do, just deal with it, life goes on. But when you think about any one of those diseases and the public campaigns and the charity benefits and the famous people and the actors and athletes that get involved in helping fight cancer or heart disease or diabetes is quite amazing. It's where's the public campaign for chronic pain? Well, there just isn't really one. But chronic pain is essentially defined as pain that persists beyond normal tissue healing times. And we know pretty definitively how long it takes for tissues to heal. Essentially, anything pain that persists beyond 3 months is now kind of approaching into a chronic type of condition. And this is very costly for our country in treating pain. Pain is a very lucrative business for people that are involved in pain with prescriptions and injections and diagnostics and surgeries. It's a very lucrative business to be in, but it's ultimately very costly to our healthcare system. And being able to pay for our healthcare system in the future is a big concern in how we do this. And so we've got to come up with much less expensive ways of being able to treat pain. And when a patient, goes out and seeks out help for pain, they're going to many times walk through many different doors. And those doors can really start to dictate the kind of care they're going to get and the potential outcome they may have. And those doors usually start out in a primary care provider's office with you typically being prescribed some sort of medication. And we have quite an issue right now with opioids in our country. And these doors that get open more doors because the side effects from some of these drugs, the complications from some of these drugs, the addiction issues with some of these drugs, really can start opening up other doors that lead to more costly types of treatments. And then those doors continue to open with very expensive diagnostic testing, MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays. All these things have pretty big price tags behind them, and may lead to getting some sort of, in many cases, a steroid injection of some sort, which again has fairly high price tag, and ultimately leading into the surgeon's office where you may get a procedure that may or may not help you. You may be in just as much pain, if not worse pain, after the procedure is done. And that is kind of a beginnings of some of the fundamental flaws that we have in the model, where we have way too much emphasis on what we see on diagnostic testing in terms of damage to the tissues, and correlate that directly to that must be what's causing your pain. The amount of tissue damage is equal to the amount of pain you have. And that's, again, just kind of a fundamental flaw in the system. So many doors get open when people start seeking out care, and at the end of it, when they've gone through all the doors and no one else knows what to do with them, they're just kind of told that that's it. You know, you're just going to have to live this way. And unfortunately, there's many more solutions to this, or possibilities of things to try than just the traditional route. Pain. The American Pain Society used the phrase pain is the fifth vital sign in 1996. The pharmaceutical industry has very deep pockets and spent a lot of time and effort to convince our medical community that we need to monitor pain and we need to treat pain. And pain really becomes a disease at this point. And around this time is also when OxyContin hit the market. Purdue Pharmacy released OxyContin. It was touted as the next miracle pain-relieving drug that was not addictive. And these claims were based on taking these pills for a couple days while recovering from surgery. And as we know, these types of opioid drugs are taken not just in the time while you're in hospital, but for weeks, months, and most of the time years later. And that's where we start to see many of the problems start to happen for people. We are steroid injecting, and prescribing opioids more today than ever before, and not getting any kind of real handle on the pain problem. The pain problem just continues to grow in spite of the injections and the medications that we're prescribing. In our country, we do a lot of spine surgery. When it comes to pain, of course, low back pain, cervical neck pain, those are definitely the biggies when it comes to pain type problems that people deal with. In our 1996, the spinal fusion was introduced to our country, and when it was introduced, we saw a very significant rise in the number of surgeries being done, 77% increase in the number of surgeries. But when you compare that to total knee replacements and total hip replacements, that's what the little abbreviations are for, we saw only a 12% increase, which followed just general population increases. So a major increase in this procedure that so many people put so much hope and faith in is going to be the thing that's going to save them, help them. I have to have this surgery in order for me to get better. And unfortunately, as you can see at the bottom, these things have about a 50% success rate. For something that people put so much hope and faith in, it doesn't have a very high success rate. So it means that you have this procedure done and you're in just as much pain, if not worse, afterwards. Because the focus, again, is what we find on diagnostics. If we can see arthritis and degeneration and spinal stenosis and all these nasty terms and phrases that are told to patients, and if we just simply go in and fix that, your pain will go away. Well, it's not directly related to the diagnostics, and probably we spend a little bit too much time focused on that. But it sounds good. You know, if you show somebody MRI, you show them an X-ray, and you describe, this, words like bone on bone, or deteriorated, or degenerated, or spinal stenosis, and bulging, and herniated, all these words. And if we just go in and fix that, your pain is going to get better. We also see that zip code is a major predictor of who is going to probably receive some sort of spinal surgery in our country. When you look at maps of the United States, and the areas of the country that do the most diagnostics are also the areas of the country that have the most surgery, which is, again, part of the problem. And a good spinal fusion is about a $90,000 procedure. And so lots of money when you think about the chain of events of drugs, diagnostics, injections, surgery, and still you're in pain. There's a lot of money that's being spent on trying to help this, and we're probably looking at it from a little bit of the wrong angle. So pain sufferers are just misdiagnosed because there is such a huge focus on the tissues of being the issue, and that if we just fix those tissues, your pain will go away. Many times people are misdiagnosed. That's not really what's causing necessarily their pain. They're very much misunderstood because Many times we're not necessarily seeing on these diagnostics, MRI or X-ray, what explains their pain, but there is still a lot of pain, and so they're told that maybe their pain isn't as bad as what they think it is because we're not finding anything to explain their pain. And honestly, people who have spent very much time in pain are just very miserable. Friends and family are worn out. They're tired of listening to complaints. I have seen many relationships broken because of pain, divorces that have happened. It's very hard on the family unit when somebody in the family is suffering in pain on an ongoing basis. And part of my mission and kind of going out and addressing this subject is to try to help keep families intact, because pain will definitely break families apart. Identities are definitely altered. No one signed up for this. No one said, I hope I can someday spend the rest of my life in pain.
Amen.
And so the kind of work that somebody can do, the kinds of social activities that they get to enjoy, and time that they get to spend with family is definitely altered when somebody's in pain. Pain makes the choices for you instead of you making the choices of how you want to spend your life. And doctors are frustrated. The model that they have is the model they have of prescribing medications and running diagnostic testing and injections and surgeries. And when that doesn't work, they don't know what to do with you. And so they need somebody in their corner that understands maybe pain from a little different aspect and can help them, help walk alongside them. Doctors are having a lot more pressure put on them with these opioids. They're having watchdogs that are literally counting how many pills they're prescribing, and if they're prescribing too many, they're being told they can't do that. And it's as a result, lots of patients are very frustrated by that because maybe the pain pills are something they feel they need or that they're addicted to, and it causes a lot of tough issues for patients. So from the International Association on the Study of Pain, pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. So here we start to see that there's emotion behind pain. It's not just I injured these tissues, I bulged this disc, I have arthritis in this joint, that there's a whole brain behind pain. And that brain has different knowledge about pain, different beliefs about pain, different understandings about pain that influence how somebody experiences pain. And it looks at actual or potential tissue damage. We have to understand that emotional overload is a big cause, can cause somebody to have pain. Our soldiers that are coming back from war that are exposed to a very harsh emotional overload, high levels of anxiety and stress, many times weren't necessarily injured, but they're experiencing pain conditions as a result, or what their systems, different systems of their body have changed. Their immune system starts to change as a result of the environment they've been in. Lorimer Moseley, which in my world, Lorimer Moseley is one of the forefathers of pain science. He is definitely one of the people that has really been able to bring fairly in-depth neuroscience to the patient level, to be able to explain pain to people in a way that maybe they can understand it for the first time and begin to change their pain situation. But he says that pain is produced by the brain. And that was a big shift for me as I was beginning to learn about this, that wasn't something that I necessarily thought about, that pain really comes from our brain. And it's after a person's neural signature has been activated. And that neural signature in your brain is very different. Every single person is different. Your pain is not my pain. It's different for all of us. And when that neural signature is ran, and the thing is with this neural signature, there's about 9 areas in the brain that are activated. Those 9 areas are the same, but again, that experience that's in our brain is different for all of us. And then if the brain concludes that you're in danger, you're going to experience pain in that back or that knee or that hip. But the brain is what decides pain. And to understand it a little bit further, I use a little analogy to begin to understand that pain comes from the brain. So if you're leaving here tonight and you walk outside and you step off the curb and sprain your ankle, do you think that would hurt? Yeah, you're right. But what if, as you're stepping off the curb and you sprain your ankle, you look up and a car is speeding through the parking lot about to hit you? does your ankle hurt then?
No.
No, because your brain, all your brain can do is take in information. It can take in information from, I just sprained my ankle, and it takes in information, I may die from being hit by this car. When your brain's biggest concern is survival, and so the threat of dying from being hit by this car or being injured pretty badly is the bigger threat. So the brain says, ankle, I need you to actually put weight on that foot and get out of the way of this car. And so that's what happens. You get out of the way of the car, the threat of the car goes away, and now does the ankle hurt? Yes, it does. And so that is a story that I use all the time to help patients kind of move away from the tissues of being the issue. You know, my degenerated hip or my arthritis or this bulging disc is like, yes, that may be creating, you know, feeding into this, but also your brain is deciding if that bulging disc needs to be painful. Because for every x-ray or MRI that someone is shown that says, aha, this is what's causing your pain, I can show you an MRI or x-ray that may even be worse, that person's like, I have no pain at all. And so that we can't put so much focus on those tests, for sure. So this neural signature is these 9 areas in the brain that when you're in pain, they know from these fancy fMRI scanners that when you're in pain, there's about 9 areas that light up when you're in pain. And the important thing for us to know is not to understand, you know, the details of these 9 areas, but just know that there's 9 areas that do light up when you're in pain. And we like to say that your brain is in a pain meeting, and your brain is being these 9 areas are causing your brain to be kind of enslaved in pain. And it's all of these 9 areas all have a primary job to do in your body. There's systems in your body that they are in charge of making work correctly. And when you are, you know, you think about your own life, if you have a project or, you know, a job that you need to complete and you're constantly being interrupted, you're being called into this meeting, the phone's ringing, the kids need something, somebody's at the door, you're constantly being pulled away from that primary job, it's very difficult to be successful at your job, right? Something's going to fall through the cracks, and that's what essentially starts to happen. The longer that somebody's in pain, other systems in the body are going to be impacted. The immune system, the digestive system, and the endocrine system, and all these different systems in the body start to pay the price for the longer that somebody's in pain, and it's not a good place to be. And so patients find themselves now with new symptoms, right, from these other areas of their body, and so now they're being sent to this ologist, right, the rheumatologist, the neurologist, the orthopedist, and they're running around all these specialists dealing with this new batch of symptoms, where the whole time the problem is that they have a pain problem, and we need to fix their pain problem, and if we start to fix these pain problems, there are other systems in their body can begin to heal and recover, and that's really what we need to look at. So again, part of the model is this biomedical model, which is very much focused on the amount of tissue damage as being the amount of pain you're going to have. And it seems reasonable that up there in A, you're looking at the amount of pathology, the amount of tissue damage. The more trauma that you have, the greater your symptoms are going to be. And that seems, you know, fairly straightforward. And in B, if we start an intervention, give you some medicines, do an injection, do surgery, send you to rehab, that your tissues will begin to heal and your pain will begin to improve and go away. But how do we understand C? C is very little pathology, right? Very little trauma, but this person has off-the-charts pain. And this is where I used to fall into this trap as a young therapist, where a patient would sit across from me, and you could tell that they were in a lot of distress, having a lot of pain, but you know, they had an MRI or an X-ray, and there was nothing that was found that could really explain why they're in such great pain. And so now they're being made to feel that maybe they're overreacting, maybe it's all made up, maybe it's just all in their head, maybe they don't want to go back to work, and that's the reason why they're experiencing the pain that they have. And that's just sad that's where we're at in terms of understanding this, that we put so much emphasis on this diagnostics. Or indeed, you can have amazing pathology, incredible trauma, major, big time injury, but this person's not necessarily having a lot of pain. And you can see this if you talk to individuals that work in ERs and deal with very traumatic types of injuries, where the person coming in and they don't appear to be in the same amount of pain as what their injury looks like. And they've made movies about this. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 127 Hours, but it was about a hiker that went out into the mountains and he finds himself getting his arm caught into some rocks. And after a few days and realizing that if he didn't do something he was going to die, he takes out a pocket knife and begins to hack his arm off, and hacks his arm off and picks up his backpack and hikes out however many miles and goes and gets help. If worse injury resulted in worse pain, the guy would just pass out and he would just die right there on the spot from having cut his arm off. But the brain says, no, survival. And the brain's going to dump in amazing amounts of chemicals, opioids and endorphins and enkephalins and serotonins to dampen down that pain. This thing is an amazing pharmacy when it's working correctly. And so this person has this horrendous major trauma and is able to not have as much pain as a result of that. So it just kind of gets you to start thinking about pain, and not necessarily always looking at the tissue side of it, as far as how somebody may experience pain. This is more of a model that we need to look at that gets us away from the tissues always being the dictator of how much pain you're going to have, how much damage to the tissues. And you see that the environment that you're injured in, the stress and the anxiety that's involved around the environment that you're injured in will definitely drive someone's experience with pain. All of that information is going to go into the spinal cord. It's all going to go into the brain. And again, what that neural signature hits is different for all of us. Your experiences with pain. Who did you grow up in your home watch suffer in pain? Who did you know that maybe got killed in a car accident? Now you're in a car accident, wondering how you're going to come out of that situation. What are your beliefs about pain? What is your understanding of how pain really works? That's going to drive how you experience pain. And different cultures experience pain differently as well. But all that information is going to get analyzed by the brain, and then there's going to be an output into the tissues in terms of how much pain you might have in your back or your neck or your knee or your hip. It's going to have a lot to do that. So we start to see that there's a lot of depth to pain, and it's not just this very linear, I hurt, tore this, ruptured this, and now I experience some amount of pain. When we look at the environment, we know that kids that play contact sports in early life tend to not have very high amounts of chronic pain later in life. And it's kind of interesting. A lot of my patients that I work with are older, and female patients that are older. You think about the opportunities to play contact sports when they were young. They may not have even been able to play sports. It may not have even been something that they necessarily partook in. And so, if your first time you take a hit is at a stoplight and you get rear-ended, or some sort of injury happens to you and you have no place in your brain necessarily as a reference point, that may be a very different pain experience than if you were a kid that got knocked down playing football and tripped playing soccer and were told to get up. That's not a big deal. You're not going to hurt. It's a whole different experience for somebody that grew up in that kind of environment. And you start learning about pain very early on as a child. When that baby is starting to walk and they fall down, many times the baby doesn't react until the parents react. When the baby falls down and the mom or dad runs over there and says, "Oh, are you okay?" And that's when the tears come, right? If we just sort of like, "Oh, it wasn't that hurt, but I'm not going to react," they just kind of get up, right? And you're teaching many times children about how to experience pain at a very young age. And I love this study that was done on demolition derby drivers, where these guys are voluntarily going out and involving themselves in motor vehicle accidents. They're taking head-on collisions, rear-end collisions, side impact collisions, not just one, right? multiple collisions in one night of racing, right? And they're driving the car until the car won't go any longer. And they figured these guys have probably had over 1,500 collisions in their whiplash type collisions to their body, right? But yet, in this whole population of people, less than 10% ever experience any kind of chronic neck pain, whereas the general population, 33% of the general population, is going to experience chronic neck pain. And so it's amazing, again, the environment. These guys are excited about ramming their car into somebody. You get hit at the stoplight from somebody behind, right? The emotion that's behind your car is now ruined. Can I work? My neck, oh my mom was in a car accident, and I remember her life and how terrible it was over those years. Your life is turned upside down by that car accident. These guys are going out and enjoying it and thrilled by it and not experiencing any kind of pain. So again, the environment and what this thing thinks about what the environment you're in has a big driver of pain. So the nervous system is a very significant part to pain, and the nervous system changes quite significantly over time. This is Harriet. Harriet was a real live person. You can Google her. She really did exist at one time. She was a housekeeper for a physician, and when she passed away, he dissected out her entire nervous system. Can you imagine the work of doing that? And she is still on display in a museum, I think, somewhere over in Europe. But when you look at that, and we really look at the nervous system as a very elaborate alarm system, and this nervous system is 45 miles of nerves. I mean, really wrap your mind around 45 miles of nerves. And it's touching every tissue in your body in some way. And it really is an alarm system. And this is how we explain it to patients. And I tell them that, when life is good and you're not in pain, your nervous system is like an alarm. It's on. How do you know? You're not in pain? How do you know that your alarm is on? Well, if you get up in the middle of the night and stub your toe, the alarm is going to go off. And you're going to, feel some pain. You're going to dance around, maybe say a few choice words. But, within a few minutes, maybe a few hours, maybe a day, the effects of stubbing your toe does eventually go away. The alarm resets, and life goes on until the next time, I guess you stub your toe or do something similar to that. And it's kind of like a car alarm. And I always tell patients, it's like, when a car alarm is working correctly, what does it take to set the car alarm off? Well, it takes someone breaking into the car. If the car alarm is working correctly, someone breaks the window, okay, I hope my car alarm goes off. That's what it was designed to do. But what happens, and this is kind of how pain starts to work, what happens if it gets to the point where all it takes to set the alarm off is that someone just touches the car, bumps up against the side of the car, a loud noise sets the alarm off. Or what if it gets so extreme, and this is where I find myself dealing with patients a lot, what if all it takes to set the alarm off is just on a windy day, the leaves blowing up and hitting the side of the door, and that's enough to set the alarm off? Or the guy out mowing and he goes by your car and a few grass blades trickle down on the hood, and that's enough to set the alarm off. That's where people find themselves in life, is that now they can't stand in the kitchen to prepare a meal for longer than 30 minutes before they got to go sit down because they're in so much pain. They can't make a round trip to the grocery store and without having them spending the rest of the evening in great amounts of pain. They can't go to that soccer game and watch the grandkids play because if they do, they're going to be hurting possibly for a long period of time. So we get to the point where we can't tolerate just basics of life. Just basic aspects of life become something that is not something that you can tolerate. The alarm has gotten to the point where grass blades is enough to set the alarm off. And the system becomes incredibly intolerant. And this is where I have an incredible amount of respect for what's going on in somebody's body, is this nervous system becoming highly sensitive and reactive to things that it shouldn't be reacting to. And this drives then the discussion that I will have with a patient about how we exercise somebody. It's not as easy as like just saying, well, here's these 5 exercises, go have at it. Everybody's alarm system is at different levels of sensitivity, and we have to walk through systematically and figure out where their alarm system is functioning at before I can effectively give them exercises. And we're matching exercises really to what their system can handle. Because again, it comes down to threat and danger, and it's what this thing thinks about what you're doing. So if I can take a particular body part that's causing somebody a lot of pain and begin to activate muscles that are, move muscles that are in and around that particular body part in a way that doesn't increase pain and doesn't necessarily go too far into fatigue, that becomes very low threat, very low danger for that person's brain. And now their brain sees that, oh, I can kind of move that muscle in that position, and that muscle in that position, and that muscle, and we begin to build more tolerance back into the system. Because one set of 15 of an exercise may be at first all they can tolerate. That gets them to the point of feeling, increase in pain, or gets them feeling tired. Well, pretty soon one set does become 2 sets, and it takes 2 sets before they feel any pain or real fatigue. And 2 sets becomes 3 sets, and 3 sets becomes, now let's do the exercise with a little bit of resistance, and we're building more tolerance back into the system. And if we can build enough tolerance back into the system, they will begin to tolerate their life a whole lot better. And I tell patients all the time, I can tell exactly what you can expect in terms of performance in daily life based on what I see you do with exercises. If we're doing a very low level amount of exercise, and that's all it takes to increase pain and get them tired, their life needs to be kind of kept at a low level. But no one's ever talked to them like that because they think that there's no answer, and if I'm not just going to sit around and not do anything, I'm going to go do it in spite of the pain, and they go do the activity and deal with the pain later on. Well, if you keep putting yourself in that situation, all you do is feeds into more sensitivity. The brain's like, danger, danger. They're not getting it. Make it more painful. Make it more painful. And that's why pain changes over time. Pain doesn't stay the same. People say, well, I can live with this pain, right? But that's not how pain works. Pain changes as time goes on, and because the brain's getting more, making you more sensitive as a result of that. So we use performance on the exercises to kind of get an idea of performance in daily life. And I use that to help begin having discussions with patients about what kinds of daily activities they are okay to do. And it comes down to what sets the alarm off. And the alarm in your body is going to be set off by pain and by fatigue. And so if we just monitor those and we take any activity, we just work just to the edge of pain. And you'll hear me use phrases like we want to tease, touch, nudge up against the edge of the alarm without setting the alarm off. And so we do that through following monitoring pain, and we do that through monitoring how tired something gets. And again, if we keep the threat level pretty low, 1 set becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes with weight, and we're building more tolerance back into the system and beginning to get this person to tolerate life in a much better way. So the exercises are this very controlled thing that we do with patients, but it's different for everybody. Everybody starts out at a different level, and the kinds of exercises they need are very different for every single person. Help, I'm under attack. This is kind of the conversation about what happens to our bodies when we're under an acute kind of attack. And we use kind of a lion attack to kind of understand that. If we're all sitting here, watching me, and all of a sudden a lion bursts in the door, what would happen? Well, there'd be a massive amount of adrenaline and cortisol that would be released in your body to prepare you to deal with this big-time threat. And systems in the body would begin to be altered to basically prepare for this attack that's coming on. And adrenaline and cortisol are a big part of what causes much of the breakdown of the body over time because of the effects that adrenaline and cortisol have on the body. Although it's good in the midst of a lion attack, it's not so good necessarily long-term for us. So adrenaline is a centrally acting neurotransmitter. It's a hormone that affects just about all body tissues. It's best known to regulate heart rate, blood vessel, and air passage diameters, which you can imagine, metabolic shifts. You need the large muscles to run away and the arm muscles to defend. And that starts to just kind of think about that. And that kind of is part of what we use to begin the process of exercising with people. The smaller muscles are not needed. Postural and stabilizing muscles are not necessary. And again, that's a big thing in the rehab world, that we're always very focused on the core, the core, the core. And many times when the effects of adrenaline and cortisol are having their effects on your body, you're trying to make muscles contract or activate that may not be possible until this threat level is brought down a little bit more. Language, loud, sharp, short, sharp, abrasive, right? You can imagine breathing faster and shallower. GI system slowed or stopped. This is very important to understand this. Cortisol, it's very similar to adrenaline. It's more potent, longer lasting. It's produced to deal with longer lasting threats produced in response to stress. Very toxic to the body. Cortisol elevated levels will cause proteolysis, which is muscle wasting, memory, long-term exposures, damage the hippocampus, and difficulty in processing, which again, in the midst of a lion attack, I don't know how much thinking you're thinking or processing you are doing at that time. Increased blood pressure, reproductive system shuts down, leading to temporary infertility. Again, in the midst of a lion attack, I hope you're not thinking about reproduction, but you start thinking about, the effects that adrenaline and cortisol may have on your body long term, and you start thinking about some of the infertility issues we have in this country, you start to kind of possibly understand a little bit more about this. Weight gain, appetite changes, obesity starts to happen with elevated levels of cortisol in the body over time. The immune system is very slow to change. Definitely during an acute stress state, the immune system is going to be put on hold. Spending time and energy on a sore throat is not needed. If we're being chased by the lion, who cares about your sore throat? But eventually you do need your immune system to start working again. And a major stimulus for the production of cytokines is cortisol. And cytokines are these pro-inflammatory aspects of your blood that when you're dealing with immune deficiencies, you're going to have very high levels of these cytokines in your bloodstream. And cortisol definitely weakens the activity of the immune system. And when you have increased cytokines kind of inside your body and these inflammatory processes, all tissues are staying inflamed as a result of that. And so when I will listen to somebody, their story tells me everything. From when they were maybe first injured, however many months or years ago that was, the treatments that were involved in dealing with that recovery, and maybe the failed treatments that resulted from those treatments, and then maybe the relationships that broke apart because of this thing in their life, this pain in their life, and the jobs that maybe they weren't able to continue doing, and the social gathering, all the things that they wanted to do in life. I explain to them what happens to their body in their acute situation, how adrenaline and cortisol affects their body in that quick moment in time. And I look at the patient and I say, what if the lion has never left your world? What if the lion is there every day and the effects of adrenaline and cortisol are ravaging your body? You start to kind of put things together, because you do need your immune system to work at some time. You do need your digestive system to function correctly at some point, right? You do need to be able to think clearly. And so many people that are in pain talk about foggy thinking and thinking they're losing their minds because they can't remember things like they used to. And it may be that the lion is having an effect on their body. And so the longer that somebody's in pain, many of these other systems are going to begin to be affected, and other health issues are going to arise the longer that somebody's in pain. And so it brings us to the discussion about food and how food impacts many of these systems, especially the immune system, especially the digestive system, and how it becomes a very integral part of recovery and healing of the body. And many times the food that we eat is the last thing that's ever really looked at or considered by the typical medical model. It may be the most important thing and probably the place that you should really start when you begin to try to improve your overall health. But I look at food as fuel, and I love this picture of this race car. I mean, look at the aerodynamics of that car. Imagine the time and the money and the research and development it took to come up with those aerodynamics. Imagine the money and time that it took to develop the engine that's in that car, and the tires, and that driver. You know, they're not just letting anybody behind that wheel. This guy has high skill set, very professional at what he does. But what makes all of that run? It's the fuel that goes in that car. If the fuel is of not the highest of qualities, it doesn't matter how skilled the driver is or how awesome the engine is or the tires or the aerodynamics. None of it's going to work all that well. But when the fuel's of the highest quality, that driver is able to pull out of that car the highest level of performance and make that car work to its fullest potential when the fuel is right. And I love this story about Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady recently, he got kind of beat around by the Chiefs, which was great. But Tom Brady, for many, many years, has been beating up many teams, including the Chiefs. But what's kind of the secret to his success? And I love this article when it came out after this last Super Bowl. Here's a guy that was 39 years of age, became the MVP of this last Super Bowl, orchestrated probably one of the best comebacks that the Super Bowl has ever had. He's won, I think, 5 Super Bowls now. May go down as one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. And the key to his success is many years ago he began to change his diet. And when I saw this quote, it just jumped out to me. It says, "When I was 25, I was hurting all the time. Now at 39, my arm never hurts, my body never hurts." And many of these athletes that extend their shelf life, play way beyond their normal years, they've done some radical changes to their diet. He eats a very plant-based diet. He exercises very differently than the traditional ways. And he's, he's still probably the best quarterback playing. And he's not limping into his last year, just trying to get one more year playing football. He's thriving and competing just as guys that are half his age. You think about it, he's 40 years old, he's playing against guys that are in their 20s. And I thought that was interesting down at the bottom where it says, on Monday, while accepting his Super Bowl MVP, Brady talked about his unprecedented career and said that when he was 25 years old, he didn't see it coming because he was hurting all the time. He knew he had to make a change, right? And look at that. He changed the fuel that was going into his body, and look at the performance that this guy was able to get. Had he not made those changes, we probably wouldn't know Tom Brady like we know Tom Brady today. And that's kind of an extreme picture, but that's really the picture for you or I. It's condensed because we see it in a short period of time with these athletes, but that's really our life, right? Begin to change the fuel that's going into your body, and it gives you the opportunity to maybe perform at some much different levels than maybe what you've been performing at because of changing the fuel. And the Physicians Committee on Responsible Medicine says that a suboptimal intake of fruits and vegetables can lead to fatigue, muscle damage, lack of muscle strength, and impaired immune function. Sounds like a lot of the problems that we suffer with. And the micronutrient content of fruits and vegetables has an important role in maintaining in health and optimizing exercise performance, energy production, and tissue recovery. That also sounds like something that we might be interested in. And it's that micronutrient piece that is really key, because fruits and vegetables have thousands and thousands of phytonutrients, micronutrition in them. And that's why it's so important to get the whole food in your body, because of just thousands and thousands of nutrients that are in there. And that's why I love Juice Plus. Juice Plus is micronutrition. It's micronutrition in a capsule form. It's fruits and vegetables and berries from lots of different colors, and providing you with that micronutrition. And it's probably the simplest thing that a person can do to begin to get their health snowball moving in the right direction. Because, can you swallow? And I guess if you can't swallow, we could open the capsules up and dump them into a feeding tube, because that's happened before. But when you look at that list of fruits and vegetables that are there, and you're able to get those into your body every day, day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, you begin to slowly start making changes at that cellular level, and you start to affect tissues in the body, and organs and systems, and pretty soon you're affecting your entire body. This stuff takes time. It's not something that just happens overnight, especially the more health declines you are, and the bigger the challenge that you may have to overcome. But don't trust me on that. Trust the research. I mean, my goodness. Here's a product that's been around for a number of years. Look at some of those research institutes that are doing research on Juice Plus. Yale, UCLA, MD Anderson, Vanderbilt. These are not fly-by-night institutes that are out there. These are some of the most reputable research institutes on our planet, doing some of the highest level research that you can do. And publications. Juice Plus has been around long enough. There's almost 40 research studies that have been done on Juice Plus. I mean, when you're out there spending your good, hard-earned dollars on, supplements, what are you basing those decisions on? Are you basing it on some solid science and research, or just, what, somebody told you about some product? And so the research is very, very important. But when you see things like changes in bioavailability, that Juice Plus really does get into your body, that micronutrition really does get into the bloodstream, that's very important. It increases the antioxidants in your body. It decreases the free radicals in your body. It helps protect your DNA. It enhances your immune system, improves circulation, improves heart health and skin health and gum health. And it reduces symptoms of the common cold. It reduces systemic inflammation, improves athletic recovery and performance. When you begin to change systems in the body in that aspect, you impact systems in the body in this way, you begin to heal and repair the body as a whole, and some amazing things can come about just from swallowing these little capsules with a lot of good micronutrition in them. So when it comes to pain, depression is a very significant part of the pain experience. And they now know that individuals with major depression have very exaggerated inflammatory responses. Somebody that's diagnosed with depression, you can draw out their blood, and they already have high levels of those pro-inflammatory cytokines, just flowing through their body. And then when they encounter a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety, maybe something that wouldn't be that big of a deal to you or I, it becomes a huge deal for them because the levels of these pro-inflammatory cytokines increase even higher as a result of that. And so when it comes to inflammation, definitely certain foods will aggravate it and others will prevent it. And I love what this author, this visual that he creates, Dr. Jack Challen, when in his book, The Inflammation Syndrome, says that the body can become like a dry field of grass that is just waiting for the match. Once the match lights, it's hard to put out the fire. And that's a lot of times where we find ourselves. The standard American diet that's very rich in processed and preserved and artificial types of foods is very inflaming to our systems. It's very acidic to our body. And many times you may be just waiting, and then something happens to you. Some trauma, some emotionally charged event happens to you, and then you find yourself in a real mess. And if you just keep fueling the fire with these very inflaming types of foods, it's very difficult to ever regain health. And that's why I say it's like it doesn't matter how skilled that driver of that car is or how awesome that car is. If the fuel going into it is not of very good quality, it's very difficult for that car to perform. And it doesn't matter how skilled your doctor is or the caregiver that's working with you. Many times if the fuel that's going to the body is not of high quality, it's very difficult for the body to even have a chance to recover. But definitely foods that aggravate inflammation are foods that lose their wholeness. Foods that have been very much processed and broken down, and they no longer have the whole food characteristics that they had when they were on the vine and picked, and they've been broken down and lost much of what made them whole in the first place. Foods that lose their balance, and this is really looking at fat ratios, omegas, looking at ratios of omegas in our body. At one time, our ratio in the foods that we consumed was more like a 1-to-1, omega-3s to omega-6s, or maybe 1-to-2. And now that ratio has become more like 1-to-10 or 1-to-20, where we're consuming 1 omega-3 to every 10 omega-6s. And omega-6s, when they're in the right ratio, are very healthy for you. But when they're in this out of proportion ratio, this is when we get into the trans fats and some of the fats that cause a lot of harm on our body. And a lot of it's just that the balance has been thrown way off in terms of the amount of fats that we're getting. Foods that lose their sweetness. When foods are real and raw and whole, they have the right amount of protein and carbohydrate and fat, and you don't get this big glycemic rush from the sugars. Your body has the right ability to break those down in the right ways. And when food manufacturers found out that sugar is cheap and sugar is something that you like, and if they enhance the flavor of sugar, you will be a consumer of their food. But all of that causes big spikes in the glycemic index and can cause a lot of problems for us when we're starting to consume a lot of these, enhanced sweeteners and even artificial sweeteners will do that. And foods that lose their medicinal effects. Hippocrates said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." We've kind of gotten away from that. And when we consume a diet that's very rich in processed foods and preserved foods, we really lose the medicinal qualities that you would get from foods that are raw in nature. And when it comes to protecting your body against inflammation, definitely omega fatty acids are a very important part of anti-inflammatory aspects of your body because of what it does in inhibiting these prostaglandins. When you take aspirin and ibuprofen and NSAIDs, they're working on that prostaglandin system. And your body makes prostaglandins from fatty acids. And examples of omega-rich foods, specifically omega-3s, salmon, tuna, and other fatty fish from a more vegetable base, flax seeds, dark leafy greens, and walnuts. But it's not just omega-3s, which is very prevalent in our society that we focus a lot on the omega-3 side of it. There's a whole chain of omegas that we need to consider. For instance, oleic acid contains omega-9s. And these are what really support omega-3s and make them work right in your body. And examples of omega-9s are almonds and macadamia nuts and canola oil and olive oil. And I love this little study that was done at this Monell Chemical Synthesis Center where they found oleocanthal, which is a component of extra virgin olive oil, inhibits COX-1 and COX-2 molecules just like ibuprofen does. And it just makes me think it's like your grocery store could save your life if you know where to shop in that grocery store. Isn't it amazing that we have grocery stores that have health food sections? And I think that's funny to think about, well, what does that make the rest of the grocery store if this little thing over here is the health food section? Right? But if you know where to shop and what to stay away from, your grocery store can save your freaking life. It's amazing. So I love the fact that Juice Plus has now come out with an omega blend. This has just recently become something that the general public can actually get. I've been taking the product for 8, 9, 10 months, I think, as kind of a test market. And it really is this looking at that full complex of omegas, omega-3, omega-5, 6, 7, and 9, coming from very much vegetable, vegetarian, non-animal-based places, like pomegranate seed oil, raspberry seed oil, sea buckthorn berry oil, tomato seed oil, algal oil, safflower seed oil. And algal oil is oil from algae, and it's what fish eat and they consume, so that gets omega-3s into them, and then we eat them, right? Well, we just kind of cut out the middle fish and went right for the source. If you could go right to the source, you could begin to get a pure strain of oils. And again, just like the beauty of Juice Plus, this micronutrition from lots of different sources of fruits and vegetables. This is omega oil blends from lots of different sources. Again, in the right balances that your body can really utilize. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to experiencing pain, the digestive system is definitely going to be part of the pain experience. And we need to understand really the microbiome of our body. and how our digestive system plays a gigantic role in so many systems in the body. 100 trillion bacteria living on or in our body. There's over 500 different species of bacteria in our body, and the bacteria in your gut is tenfold greater than the number of cells in the human body. You are more microbiome than you are human, and this really begins at birth. When that baby passes through that birth canal, his face and nose and lips are being covered by mama's good probiotic bacteria. And now they've linked that when baby is not passing through the vaginal canal and having that kind of a birth, that they're not getting mama's bacteria, they're now linking so many digestive issues that babies suffer back to that fact. With 30 to 40% of births in today's world are by cesarean. And when you take that one simple piece of that puzzle out, you can really set somebody up for a lot of problems down the road. They've linked a lot of asthma and allergies back to the fact that baby didn't pass through the birth canal. So it's very interesting to kind of think about that. And many times doctors that have to perform a cesarean because that's just the only option, the really awesome doctors are taking a cotton swab and they're swabbing the inside of the vaginal canal and then coating the baby's lips with that so the baby is able to get some of mama's bacteria. So it's just sort of thinking about the importance of some of that as we go, but it definitely starts at birth. And we've become so antibacterial in our country, right? We are scared of bacteria. And all our pursuits to knock out bacteria has caused the problem where we've really knocked out a lot of the healthy, good bacteria in our body. And we're slowly starting to kind of move away from some of that fear of the boogeyman bacteria, and realizing that if we just bolster our own immune system and build up our own defenses, it doesn't necessarily matter what these outside invaders are doing. But your brain's health is dictated by what goes on in your gut. The gut participates in a wide variety of bodily systems, from immunity, detoxification, inflammation, neurotransmitter production, nutrient absorption. 70% of your immune system resides in your gut. When you put food into your mouth, that's the first entry point for a lot of pathogenic bacteria, lots of toxins in your body, and so your immune system needs to be right there, ready to work. And so your immune system is a very significant part of the digestive system. Your gut affects your mood. 80% of the serotonin your brain uses is produced in the gut. I never really thought about serotonin. You say, oh, it's in your brain, right? Well, where was it made? It's made in your gut. It's made in the digestive system. And you think about it, your digestive system is all haywire, not working correctly. How well are you producing some of these neurotransmitters? How well is your immune system working? Because no one pays attention to the health of the gut. We don't dive into this. We don't go after and try to fix the gut. We just treat all these symptoms that are on the outside. But no other system in the body is more sensitive to changes of the gut than the central nervous system. Very, very touchy. So pain is a master at concealing its true identity. You may feel that pain begins and ends in your joints or muscles, but often it begins in the gut. And leaky gut is a big part of the problems that we start to develop in the digestive system because of many of the foods that we eat, and pathogenic bacteria and toxins and even medications begin to inflame the lining of the digestive system and begin to break it down. And once it breaks down, food particles can leak out into the area, and pathogenic bacteria can leak out, and toxins leak out, creating this very significant inflammatory response in the body. And Hippocrates, the guy was smart, wasn't he? Stated that all healing begins in the gut. It's like, wow, what a simple concept. If you're really struggling in this area and you really want to get a handle on this, one of the biggest things you need to do is you need to remove gluten, dairy, sugar, genetically modified organisms, and eggs out of your diet as quickly as you can. And you need to do that for a period of time, probably 3 weeks or longer, to really kind of start allowing your gut to start to heal. And you need to replace that with probiotics. And probiotics are, again, putting good bacteria back into the gut. Fermented foods are a wonderful way to do that. Kombucha tea is something that we drink a lot of at our house. It has all this really healthful probiotic bacteria in it. And you begin to kind of put that fuel back in there. Fruits and vegetables really become food sources for the healthy bacteria. That's why sometimes when you haven't eaten a lot of fruits and vegetables and you begin to do that, it becomes kind of a rumbling experience. It's like those bacteria are having a party down there, like, yippee! Woohoo! We're about to get the food, man! And so, yeah, enjoy that. It's good. It's not a bad thing. And definitely one great way of beginning to heal the gut is continuing to consider beginning the shred. And the shred is a program that you can learn more about where you begin using the Juice Plus products and you begin doing kind of an elimination diet where you cut out a lot of these things that are hard on the digestive system and you kind of get your health snowball rolling and kind of a kickstart to moving in a better direction. And definitely there's plenty of people in the audience that can tell you all about the shred and what it's been doing. But planning ahead for success is a big part of really kind of winning at this deal. When our kids were little, we had nibble trays. We had these cupcake tins, and Christy would fill them up with lots of different fruits and vegetables and keep them in the refrigerator, and that was how we got them introduced to eating fruits and vegetables and begin developing a taste for these things. But these have not changed. I mean, still this day, that big tray that you see there, the white one, and we have a little red one, and they're full all the time. And they come out at breakfast time, and they get sat between the two boys, and they snack on some blackberries, and some raspberries, and some strawberries. It gets pulled out after school, and maybe it's got some veggies in it, and it's just like, this is what you're snacking on. It just becomes this routine thing in our house. And it's amazing to see how healthy these boys are and the types of accomplishments that they're beginning to have because of that fuel that's allowing them to perform at a really high level. Injury and sickness and illness can be one thing that can shut an athlete down really fast. Or if you're on the other side of the fence, it might be the one thing that gives you the edge to really be able to compete at a really high level. We also love smoothies at our house, and I love the Juice Plus Complete. It's a plant protein mix that has all kinds of other good plant foods in there, much different than what you find in your capsules. Fruits, vegetables, or berries are in the omegas. But just like clockwork, I'll be coming down the stairs to start up for work, and I'll hear the blender fire up, and Christy's making this amazing smoothie, and who knows what the heck she's throwing in that. Besides the Juice Plus Complete, all kinds of things you can hide in your smoothies. And I love that. And so we all have a glass of smoothie to get our day off and off to a good start. But I love the Complete because you can shake it up mix it with water or just with milk, or you can make it very elaborate into a smoothie. Also growing your own pharmacy. And I love the Tower Garden. And the Tower Garden is another way to be able to have easy access to fruits and vegetables on a regular basis. And I love the versatility of the Tower Garden, that you can have it outside on your back patio where you can conveniently go get some greens and some herbs. And we have kale that we grow year-round and that we're adding to our smoothies on a regular basis. And when the season starts to get like it is, where we can't grow outside, we bring it indoors and we use lights to keep the party going with growing some of these greens throughout the year. And as many of us know that use the Tower Garden, you begin to get more greens than what you can handle. And so you got to make some mason jar salads. On Sunday night when you're getting ready for work, it sounds like a good idea to maybe take a salad that next day to work. But on Monday morning when it's go time, you get out all of those ingredients and begin to chop and slop and assemble a salad. No, you don't. And you say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Well, tomorrow just never really happens. And so, but on Saturday or Sunday when you have maybe some time, you can have a mason jar assembly party if you want. Bring all your friends together and make these mason jar salads up. And now you've got 5, 6, 7 salads in the refrigerator. And so you go out the door to work, get the salad in one hand, smoothie in the other, swallowed your capsules. And my goodness, you might start impacting your overall health when you start to do that. It might be amazing what could happen. when you start to do that. So many of you may feel this way. You may feel abandoned in the weeds. You may feel that there's no more use in you, that you're kind of crusty and rusty and just kind of out behind the barn and the weeds are growing up around you. And I understand that that's how a lot of people feel when they've been in pain for a while or suffered with health decline in some way. But I just want to tell you that there is a hot rod in there. And sometimes we do got to pull you in. We got to strip it down to the bare metal and kind of rebuild it back. But there's a hot rod inside of there, and that's what we're really kind of trying to pull out of you. And if we can pull that hot rod out of you, that does become more of a life of abundance and a life of high performance. And options start to be more in your control than the health crisis being always in control. So definitely thank you. We are definitely your guide. This community of people are amazing, and their knowledge and understanding of nutrition is second to none. And they would just love to partner up with any one of you that are just looking at this for the first time and help kind of walk you through making some of these health changes. And it's an amazing community of people to be around. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.